Everyone, it's Sanella here. Okay, I'm going live with Terry tonight. So I am going to try and find her. Oh gosh, how does one do that here? Right, and Terry, and send. Yes, so right. Hello, Terry. Hello, Emma. Hello, hello, hello,
Hey
hello.
there.
Oh, fabulous. Oh,
Hey.
that was smooth. That was smooth. Okay, don't jinx it.
Don't jinx it.
Oh, honey, thank you for joining us. Hello, Emma, um, or joining me, or instigating this lovely conversation about personal development.
Yeah.
Yes, and I just want, will the reason we are doing it, the reason we thought it would be so good for us to talk about it, because we have lots experience doing it ourselves, and we also work with people. So personal development is our thing. And GPG has, we formed GPG so that we create this space for parents to have somewhere to go to develop themselves as they are being parents.
Yeah.
And we feel so strongly about it because it's such a brilliant time in our lives where kids show us where we have to grow and develop, and we have so much love for them that is a kind of a beautiful uh, beautiful connection there, and opportunity to do that, but it's
Yeah.
not easy.
No, no. And then you're right that there is a reason we're not just bringing personal development to parents because we're parents and we want to do something for there is something very compelling about this phase of your life and doing personal development during this time.
Mm.
Um, but the reason I came to this, Snella, is because I was really thinking about the phrase personal development, right? We try to explain to people what we do and say we do personal development for parents. That means something to us because
Mm.
we're coaches and because we do this all the time. But if you had to put personal development into some of your own words, how would you describe what it is?
Oh, beautiful question. um, I used to think that it's about becoming a better version of myself. I thought it
Mm.
was something going towards something bigger and better. But I think with experience and my personal experience, and also as a coach, I think, and especially after I became a parent, I think it's more about taking the layers off so that I find myself. So I feel like personal development is about finding the bits that are constraining me to be the full me.
Wow,
That's how I kind of I don't know if that.
I love the layers analogy. We
Mm,
are all multitudes and we are all layered, right?
mm,
Whether you want to go from outside in or inside out, there are layers of us, right? Some of it layers that we've taken on, sometimes layers that have been placed upon us by our culture, our families of origin, our society, right? We have layers of who we are, and sort of the outermost layer is seen by the world, but there's other layers maybe that we don't show to the world, and maybe
mm,
even layers internal to us that we don't even know are there. Yeah.
100%.
Um,
Yes, yes.
there's also something for me about there is a bit of an evolution. So you said, maybe it's not necessarily a better version of yourself, but a
Mm,
different version of yourself, because maybe it's just that who I was before in, my teens and my 20s was who I was supposed to be then. But
mm,
then for me, personal development was, development, like our children go through development, right? They go
yes.
through stages. You know what? They don't have all the skills at 1 and 2 in their toddler years, that they have when they're teenagers or adults. And they're not meant to, right?
Yeah.
But they need to go through these developmental stages, and they need to learn new skills, and they need to have different understandings of how the world works, right? So at each age, at each stage and phase of our life, there is an understanding we're supposed to have of the world, but that changes over time. So
Yeah.
for me, there is an not necessarily a better version of myself, but an evolution of
Oh, I
myself.
love that. I absolutely love that. And am I saying it's about ditching the programming?
Oh, good
Yeah,
one. Yeah.
100%. Yes. And I think if I understood you correctly, you wanted to have this conversation because we see a lot of kind of before, here I am, very enthusiastic. I want to change, develop. I want to be the best person I can be so that I can raise the best, the best people who will come behind me, i.e. our kids. And then we see the after, sort of like, and here I am, fully transformed, whatever that looks like, a polished version. I think, we kind of hear a lot of that, like, I've gone through a lot of personal development, and now I'm able to, maybe I'm able to stay calm in the presence of big emotions, or I'm able to, to be a little bit more loving and kind towards myself. So we kind of hear those two sides of, or two ends, but we don't talk about the messy middle. And I think, you and I are very very passionate about talking about that, because in that messy middle there can be a lot of shame, and a lot of kind of, oh, they're doing it better than me. And I think we don't want that for our community of parents, because there's so much pressure anyway. So let's kind of take that, let's talk about that, so that we see what that looks like. So
Yeah.
what would you say is the messy bit about personal development for you?
Okay, so I think there's a lot to say about that. I want to back up one step and just say that the reason I want to talk about that messy middle is because it's when people say, oh, okay, I'm going to engage in some personal development, or they stumble into it. Sometimes, for me, personal development really is the first step of it is this self-awareness, like starting to see your way of showing up in the world, your way of operating, your beliefs in the world, and starting to understand that they are not one finished, concrete, or the right way. They are just one way, and that there is another way. And in that process, it can be hard. And as you said, there can be a lot of shame in it. And I just want to highlight that you and I like doing this. Like, we seek out personal development. We have coaches of our own. We are coaches to other people. We promote it. We want to offer it to other people. So obviously we're proponents of it. But I have to admit to myself and remind myself that what we're offering is not easy, and it's not always palatable to other people. It's not always wanted. We can argue whether it's needed or not. I would say it probably is needed, but one individual may not feel that need internal to themselves, like, I need to do this. And I think I got curious about why some people love it. Why people, who do personal development, who journal, who get coaches, who willingly submit themselves to ditch the programming, as Emma said, like, it's hard, and it can be confronting.
Oh, massively.
Right?
Massively.
And so when you do it, I just wanted for people to know that, yes, it's hard, but there's sort of a good, a bad, and an ugly, right? There's a hard, there's a confronting bit, but there's an after also that's so worth it, that the lightness you feel as those layers fall away, the vastness or the width the greater width that you can understand about the world when somebody says it's not just about these things that you can see in front of you. It could also be this or this or this, right? And you say, okay, there are multiple ways of being with this. So I think that was important for me, right? To just admit, because sometimes I get carried away and like everybody wants personal development. And understanding that, I know why people don't always just jump right on it or dive right into it.
Yeah.
And I had to take myself, I want to ask you a question here.
Oh, okay.
I want to ask you a question.
I was about to ask you.
I know. You're going to ask me something first, but I'm going to ask you first.
Go on.
I had to remind myself of what it was like to go back to, and I had asked you one time, a while ago, like, do you remember your first moment of like, self-awareness or personal development? You're like, I don't know. Feel like I've been at this for a really long time. I don't know if I can remember it, but I want to know, can you remember one of these particularly, these moments? And you don't have to give us the details of what it was all about, but like what it was like to go through it.
After you asked me that, I had to think about what it was like, and I definitely then I uncovered there was a path for me. Okay, so I did not jump straight into one-to-one coaching, which I love now. Okay, because so I think my journey started with lots of reading, lots of curiosity around, why people do things, what, that they do. Why am I, just a lot of introspection and lot of stuff like just, I was always drawn, like you could always find me in the self-development, psychology. One of the first books that I've ever read was something about, transformational things about yoga, which was a book that my mum had it, like that was probably the only book that somebody gave her, and I read a chapter. So I think for me, I definitely know that there was a time of doing books, and then there was a time of attending programs where I could still sort of get the information, reflect, but not be as openly, not be sort of in the center stage, because I think I really, as a coachee, like somebody being coached and be coaching other people, I really appreciate and have a lot of respect for the courage it takes to actually be coached. It's a very vulnerable thing, to extremely rewarding, but very, very vulnerable to lay, to kind of show somebody your underbelly, to kind of say, here's all my stuff. And I want to talk to.
Yeah. I just had a coaching session today. I had to take a nap after.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. 100%. And yeah, so that was, so kind of, I can't remember the kind of as I told you, like I can't remember the first moment, but I do remember, and I still have that, like that Ave, that sort of like, wow, I did not see that way, or wow, that is in me, or wow, do you know what I mean? Like, that there is something just profoundly beautiful about getting to know yourself so much that I don't know, that you feel, I can in coaching session, I can really, you get exhausted sometimes, but you feel like, yeah, I've grown.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So you started out with maybe knowledge, some knowledge acquisition, and that turned to understanding of maybe human behavior in general, then being a reflective person.
Yes,
There was
extremely.
some amount of self-reflection you could do, and you could maybe see yourself from the descriptions on the pages of, oh yes,
Oh yeah.
this is me, this is my
Yeah.
way of thinking, this is my way of and could you get with that to the and there's another way, like, so that blinders off moment where you're like, oh, I did not see that.
Yeah.
How did you
I
access that?
I think I access that somewhat. I really believe that in every instance of every conversation, every meaningful conversation um, gives you, if you pay attention, you know, everything and everyone gives you a mirror. And I kind of, I have that, and I've had that for a very long time. So I could reflect off other people, if you like, in conversation. So and I could say that those changes are incremental and small, but the big sort of aha moments, the big kind of growing from inside, transformation, you know, what we talk about, like transformation, for me that happens, that only happened once I engaged in one-to-one.
Yeah, that's a really helpful distinction, I think, Sanella. That you could kind of gain insights by looking and observing that things are different for other people, and then thinking about how it is for you, and that those understandings are incremental shifts in your understanding of yourself or the world. But that these bigger burstings of awareness come from being in face-to-face work with somebody else. And
Correct.
I had the same experience. I think there's something about one-to-one coaching, or being in a program where there's somebody who's going to coach you, where you can learn knowledge, you can understand how something works a different way. You can do self-reflection and say, okay, and this is the way I'm currently operating. You can somehow attach it to like a goal you want, like, but I want this other thing. I think I needed, for me, one of my first experiences was, you know, I wanted, you know, kind of these deeper connections with the loved ones in my life and the people in my life. And, you know, one of the first things in my coaching program that my coach kind of challenged me on in the front of the room, in front of 20 people. So if you think one-on-one coaching is hard, people, like, don't go to become a coach in a coaching program. It's tough. But he kind of got me on the, you know, always being in the helper seat and not allowing myself to be helped by others. Right. And having seen myself as somebody who was caring and loving and giving, and yet I would not accept help from others. And, you know, and a coach, when you engage with a coach, you are giving them permission to challenge your way of thinking, but challenge you not just to be difficult, but to challenge you in service of your goal. Like, he knew, he was challenging, but he knew what I was trying to get to. So in service of what he knew I most wanted, he was willing to say, okay, you help people because you feel good, because you want to be loving to them. Why do you deny them the same opportunity to love you?
Yeah.
To which I crumbled, right? Like, and that's just a small example of how I'm like, I hadn't even seen it that way.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
I thought, I'm not letting other people help me or asking other people to help me because I don't want to burden them. And because, you know, I had some identity wrapped up in being a strong, independent woman and sorting it all out myself, for sure. There was that work stream. But I needed somebody to sort of show me the other side of the coin that I was not seeing, that what they were offering me was an opportunity for them to show their love and their care for me. And it was like they were handing me some love and care, and I was saying, no, I'm good.
Yes, and I could picture that moment. It is. I had a coach who says it's all medicine. All these insights. It's some sort of a medicine. It's not always easy, or you. It's not always easy to drink, but if you kind of see everything as an offering, then it's there for you. So I love that moment. And as you were talking about it, I'm thinking about how being a parent, we are, especially in early years, but I think every stage kind of gives its it brings its own opportunities to grow. How we are actually, our kids are bringing us those mirrors. And I think personal development for me, it's a lot about that, being curious. And again, I have to say, it's about being brave to be curious. Because when when you describe that moment when he said to you about gave you that insight, you could have clumped down and say, well, you're ridiculous. That's nothing to do with it. And then sort of attach yourself to the superwoman, to the persona, and that of course sometimes can happen. But it's that curiosity and being, you really do open yourself up in order to get to more connection, to get to more, whatever whatever the goal is. But I'm just, it's kind of, it can be quite a lot of opportunities, or a lot of mirrors can shown to us as and when as we are raising our kids, because that seems to be
about that. I want go into that in terms of what is it about parenting that really triggers and sets off these moments of, or these opportunities for self-reflection?
I'll speak personally. The moment I had my kids, or my first kid, it was as if with him I also suddenly saw myself as a kid. So I remember the whole I think we are sort of broken open in that process of becoming a parent. And then you're extremely vulnerable. You're extremely, there's so much change that you are going on physically and psychologically and in the environment. And for me, it was very much like, oh wow, everything that happened to him was a could pressed, not everything, but the things that where I saw that I was reacting a little bit too strongly, or I surprised myself how upset, or how upset I got. Then that was a signal for me to kind of think, oh, what is going on? And actually it was a coaching conversation that I had about my son. Something happened in the playground, like somebody didn't want to play with him. And then I brought that in as his problem. I brought that to a coaching session because I wanted my coach to help me figure out how to help him deal with these hard life situations.
Yeah.
And she just turned the mirror to me and said, Sinella, don't parent yourself. I was like,
ooh, good one. So what you're referring to here then is that every step our children go through has the possibility to reactivate a memory or an emotion from our past, from similar situations in our past.
100%.
And so our history is sort of reliving itself in their experiences.
Yeah. Do you find that to be true?
I'm sure if I sat and I thought through a lot of them, I would find them. I don't have those as obvious. I don't have an example like that, though I'm sure they're there. maybe I have a lot more work to do. But what where I find the mirror, where I find two other things that come to the top of my mind as prompting me for personal development as a parent. And one is that it felt like this really important job that I finally had, and a job that was so important. Failure was not an option. And so that weight of you cannot screw this up. It was too important to get it wrong.
Okay.
So somehow then that was pushing me, like, then you really have to sort out what's going on for you in order to get this right. And so that leads to, you know, when I wasn't the best version of myself.
Yes. Oh, I get that. And we see that a lot in our community. So can you stay with that and tell me about the dark side of that?
Okay, there's a lot, right? I mean, so let's go back to our perfectionism conversation. That somewhere in that line of thinking is a belief that there is a right or wrong way to parent, that there is a chance that somebody's going to get it all right, and that, you know, I can somehow get through it without getting it wrong, and that there's even a possibility of failing. Like, what does, you know, what would that definition be? What's failing? And I think for me, the bar was so high that failing was anything less than perfect. So that's where I think I first had to do my work, is on perfectionism. But yeah, the dark side of holding that belief that this job is so important. And somewhere also, as I hear myself talk about it, right, there's this, like, it's all up to me. Like, somehow how they turn out is 100% in my control and up to me, which of course it's not.
No, not at all. And I think that's a specific situation in parenting, that we are in, you know, we are kind of coming into this personal development in order to do this, as you said, to do this job well, and to be of service to these lovely people that that we have in our care. And I think if we are not careful, kind of putting too much pressure on ourselves to kind of get to some sort of enlightenment, or some sort of, like, you know, final position from which we will then do things perfectly, or do things sort of, I don't know, at some point definitely I can relate that there was a moment in my thinking, especially when my kids were young, that I will somehow, by doing personal development, that I will somehow prevent them from having any issues in their childhood. That, like, you know, that I'm just gonna create this, like, you know, they're not gonna need a therapist. And I think that is probably one of those things that I like to share with parents, is like, you know, we are not doing it for that reason. We are humans. We are, you know, as you know, we are wired for struggle. Our kids are wired for struggle. They're gonna have their fair share of being human, and they're gonna feel, you know, that they're gonna have their luggage that they're gonna take to their therapist. But I think for me, I remember having that a permission from going to, like, you know, I have to do this perfectly. You know, this is the most important thing, and I'm going to do everything to develop myself to, you know, be this perfection, which I'm not. And then kind of to come to a place to say, you know, I give myself permission to be real, to be on this journey, to engage with this personal development, to do the best I can with the knowledge and with the awareness I have. When I know differently, I do differently. And I know there is a lot of grief that comes through that. You know, I have experienced that. I don't know if you have, but I know the moments where you do develop and grow, and you look at what you've done and you think, oh shit, you know, that is, and it feels painful. And there is, and I think part of our personal development that we don't talk about is this letting go and accepting ourselves in all our imperfections, in all our striving, because that's what we are doing. We are doing this personal development to strive, you know, for better.
Of course. I mean, and if we take our developmental journey and align it back to the kids again, like I was saying before, like, you know, a teenager should not look back on regret for throwing their peas and carrots when they were a toddler. Like, as you said, when we know better, we do better. So it's, to have some.
Hello.
Is actually a gift. And you know, the fact that you might have something to regret is a sign of growth. It's actually a positive marker for you. So let's shift to that direction to round us out in our conversation. Is what is the light side of doing the hard work? We just said it can be confronting. It can be hard to see that there's like another way of operating that you have not been taking or choosing for so long. What's the bright side of it? What is there on the other side that you found?
I have, as I said at the beginning, I think with every step of personal development, I am coming closer to being the version, being freer, being more myself, being more comfortable in my own skin. And I kind of have, I do believe strongly that the more we can grow into that ourselves, the better we are able to do that for our kids, and more present can we be for them. So that is my kind of the bright side and the big why, because I'm not, I think that's important distinction for me to make, that I am developing myself in order to be the best parent I can be, but I'm not doing that just for them. I'm doing that because in this process of growth, I'm creating the life. I think it's important that I keep creating the life for myself, which is then allowing them to create the life for themselves, so that my life is not a burden to them, if that makes sense. So I just kind of, that personal development in this space, in this parenting, is for me and for them. So how about you?
Yeah, pretty much the same thing, in that I'm definitely all in for me. Like it has to be for me first, right?
100%.
And part of what is for me is knowing that I'm showing and modeling to my children how you navigate through life as an imperfect person, and how you can have one belief one day and learn and grow and hold another belief another day. How you can be struggling to, you know, show up as one version of yourself, and you can evolve. You can become this other person. So that change is possible, right? And
yes,
I think what I keep getting, I'm a little bit addicted to this this what else is out there that I don't see. Like, maybe this is just extreme curiosity, but like, you know, I'm walking through this world and I think I understand it. And you know, part of my coaching session today actually touched on this, you know, starting to stay open to the possibility of how much I don't and won't understand. And, you know, of course, that comes in uncertainty and our comfort or discomfort with uncertainty. But for me, I'm really, when somebody can kind of pull those blinders off and say, I see how you've been seeing the world as, you know, Black for so long, when in fact it's, you know, there's a whole group of people over here who see it as white, and then there's a spectrum of gray in the middle, and people, and I'm like, wow, I didn't know, right? You know, you only living and walking in one body and in one mindset. I only see things one way, and I'm really fascinated to see and know that there are other ways. And when somebody points out to me how one directional I've been seeing something, I'm sort of very appreciative of it. Like I just feel like I love that feeling of like, wow, now that I know and see something, I can't unsee it.
100%. And I love that that moment you're describing, like, you know, when you can share that moment with somebody. I often have this, when I work with my coach, I often have this huge like love, like, you know, thank you so much. That was just like, you know, out of this world. Like, you know, I really, really appreciate that. But if I compare myself, like the early version of me, like, you know, the kind of the beginner on this road of personal development, like now I'm grateful to be shown something. When I started, and I've seen that in my clients as well, that was not as welcoming. Okay, I think there is a maturity on this, because the more we develop in ourselves and in our certainty of who we are. So, like, you know, now when somebody shows something to me, I'm like, oh wow, that is just, I can grow more. That, thank you so much. At the beginning of the journey, it's very vulnerable, because at the beginning, especially if you haven't healed the kind of the triggers and not good enoughness in you, which, you know, I'm still working on that. I'm not saying I've finished, but there is something at the beginning where moments like that were very hard, very hard to hear, because it's kind of it's too hard to kind of, oh wow, you know, you see it, but then you see a big gap. So I think it's also important to kind of know that is okay. That is exactly how it needs to feel. That is how it feels. That is that journey.
Our beliefs and our understanding of the world, you know, there's a certain amount of safety that they provide to us, right? This is how I understand the world, and this is the beliefs I have, and it's kind of feels like, okay, that's done. I know this to be true. Okay, good. That's sorted. I've learned this. This is true. I've sorted it, right? And you have to then, in that moment, admit that something you have checked off as true could have another version of it out there.
Yeah.
You have to revisit it, and it doesn't.
And the consequences of that.
And maybe it was true before. Maybe being a strong, independent woman was exactly what I needed to learn when I was a teenager.
Yes.
But, you know, as a mom of 2 young toddlers, I was breaking apart trying to do it all myself. Like that wasn't working anymore. So truth changes somehow, and you don't. So there is a discomfort in having to let go of what we knew. It can feel scary, and when you say there's a gap there because we haven't yet filled it in with a new understanding, or how that could be for us. You know, it reminds me, I have to circle back to the final ending of that, the chicken,
excellent. Okay.
the chicken story I mentioned on. So if you guys who are listening, if you haven't seen it on our IGTV, yeah, I did. I read this whole thing by Mark Nepo, who wrote this book of awakening. It's beautiful, and he was talking about this analogy of the chick being born and coming out of its shell, and it says, you know, the chick offers us the wisdom that the way to be born while still alive is to eat our own shell when faced with great change. We sometimes must take in all that has once enclosed us, nurtured us, incubated us. So when the new life is upon us, the old is within us.
Gorgeous.
It's brilliant, right? Like, because I think when you talked about layers, like you don't have to throw out who you were. That person is with you. We are, this is what we mean by, like, we are multitudes. We are, that 5-year-old girl that was in me, the 10-year-old, the teenager, like they're in there. I feel like I'm like one of those like Russian dolls,
Oh yes,
like the
yes,
little,
yes.
and
Yeah,
you
yeah,
kind
yeah.
of just,
Babushkas or
yeah,
whatever they're called.
I think that's this. I don't know.
Yeah.
Montrieshki dolls. Montrieshki dolls.
Okay.
Um, you have in you all that you were, but you also can become more. And for me, this is the promise of personal development, the hope and possibility of personal development. But it does mean coming in and being ready to let go of all that felt certain and safe before, and to set it aside and say, how could I be wrong about what I knew before?
Yeah. Yeah. Good. I
Thank
enjoyed
you.
that.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you.
you. Another one of our unpolished podcasts, as we're starting to call these lives, because lives are too intimidating for us to think about. But if we think of them as just a very unpolished podcast,
Yeah,
we could talk for a very long time. So
we
that's
can.
lovely.
We can. Fabulous. Thank you
Yeah.
all for joining us. And yeah, I'm just checking if there
Oh,
are any.
lovely. Thanks
Yeah,
everyone for joining us, and it's good to see you here. And Sanella, it's good to see you here.
we'll love as always, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah. Have a good evening, everyone.
You too.
Bye.
Bye bye.